Hi, everyone, and welcome to our final season of the Double Stuff Podcast, where we are double the hosts, double the topics, and double the fun. I'm Charity.
And I'm Alan.
I'm Dan.
Oh, look at that. All happy. I'm Sarah.
Yay! And as we've announced in previous episodes, this is our final season. So we are very proud of the work that we've done for the past 4 years in Double Stuff Podcast. Just backstory, we're not fighting. We don't hate each other. We're all still friends. We just decided to move on and to do other projects and other personal passions that we have. So, but yes, this is our final season. So we're kind of just going to talk about some of our thoughts of how we've grown and changed over the past 4 years of podcasting and maybe looking towards new projects that we're doing. So, Alan, I can start with you.
Okay.
Do you have any final thoughts about what we've done over the past 4 years?
Reminiscing.
So this is my first podcast, and I feel very fortunate that my very first podcast has lasted as long as it has. I mean, it's extraordinary that we've gone over 200 episodes. I didn't think that we'd have a problem with coming up with material when we first got together. We were all coworkers, and we could all spin yarns for hours anyway. So I never really thought that we would have a problem with that. And so here we are 4 years later, and we still can do it. It's been amazing. It really has. I've learned a lot about the back end of podcast producing. So when Sarah and we were talking about this years ago, the biggest thing was podcasts were on the rise. And as producers, I felt like as a producer, this is something that I need to at least know how to do. And what better way to know how to do it than just do it? And we didn't have any other idea of what it was that we were going to do other than we were going to start a podcast. And at the time, and we're unique in the current era of podcasts because we were kind of at the crest of when it was pretty much audio only.
Yeah.
Video wasn't really a big thing. It wasn't even necessary, and we've kept to that formula, which I'm sure we'll talk about in this episode as far as like growing in different projects and things to add. I don't feel like our podcast lacked anything for not having video. I feel like we were the listener could be right there with us, and that was kind of our whole plan was that it would be our podcast would be a conversation amongst friends and coworkers that somebody else could join in and just listen to. And I think that we were able to do that. On top of that, I think I did a calculation. This was like a year ago, but at that time, it was like 12,000 minutes of my voice was on the internet. And I'm sure it's grown since then. So the scary part now that we're going into AI is if somebody wants to make Alan Atha just sound like Alan Atha, they certainly can, which is a little bit scary, but I've never really lost any sleep with that. I do, however, find a lot of solace in knowing that if anything should ever happen to me in the future, which of course one day it will, that if somebody wants to get to know who it was or who I am and what I thought and a few of my stories from childhood and adulthood and my teenage years, it's been recorded. So for that, it's been invaluable for me.
That would be something cute to give your girls, and I don't know how media is going to change in the future, but if you had like
posterity,
something like on a flash drive, you kind of gift that to them, like, oh, here's stories from your dad.
As long as Google never goes under and the algorithm or the servers never die. I mean, we have all of our episodes are on YouTube, so it lives on in perpetuity as long as it's around.
Just save it to a couple cassette tapes. Way back.
Exactly.
You'd only
tape.
need a few.
Yeah.
Cassette tapes and a number 2 pencil.
That's
just in
right.
case.
Double
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
mixtape.
Get one of those
I like
fancy
it.
Walkman that like you didn't have to flip the tape around. You could just run one side and the
Oh,
other.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was high living.
was.
I didn't have one.
I didn't have that. I had one of those non-skip CD players though.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
are
That
nice.
you could like take to the gym
Yeah.
and go running with.
I used to have. You remember the little dictaphones that had the little mini tapes that
See,
you
we-
could
Oh, yeah.
record your
Yep.
voice and
We
things
never,
like
we
that.
never had. I don't think we ever had those.
I had one thinking that I would record really good thoughts and things. Never did.
Nope.
Never have. So I mean, this form,
You've
even
made
though
up
it's
for lost time now.
well,
yeah.
in its informal sort of setting, it allowed me to basically record thoughts that, and it gets you out of your head too. When when it's in a conversation, it comes naturally. You don't feel like you're struggling to, okay, as soon as I hit this record button, now everything that comes out of my mouth has to be important, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's not, obviously. And I get to share that responsibility kind of with, I think there's a letting down of the guard when you have a conversation with others when you're
Oh, yeah.
recording, because you don't feel the intimidation of everything has to be, on point.
That's fair.
So,
Absolutely.
Dan, do you have any final thoughts? Because you've kind of gone through
He's gone through a
multiple changes.
metamorphosis.
Yeah, because you moved and then you came back, and we had to do it online for a
yeah.
while. So, what are your final thoughts on the past 4 years?
Well, I think we talked about this when we first started, but I mean, I've been involved in, like, before this, a video game podcast, a Star Wars podcast, a comic book podcast, and, they all lasted a few days, a few weeks, a few episodes, and then they were done. So it's been awesome to do this for like the last 4 years, especially with the ups and downs that we had to go through. I mean,
Yeah.
starting it when we did back in, we recorded in January, but starting in March or
April.
excuse me.
Yeah.
And then everything that was going on there, and then moving in June, and then coming back. So it's been quite a roller coaster, and I know that I'm very like private, like a person just generally. So, but when you guys talked to me about this in the first place, and you came up with the idea, and you were like, "Hey, we should do this," I was like, "It's the best group of people to do this with." Like, absolutely.
that's
So
sweet.
sweet.
Well, just because of the conversations that we'd have, like, at work and working together, and like, we were on breaks from like, shooting or like live stuff or whatever. It's just like, this is a no-brainer. This is a great idea. And you don't have to be like super knowledgeable on a topic or keep up to date, like I did with like a video game podcast of like new news. It was just like get together and hang out and chat and record it. And really, if anybody wanted to listen to it, that was awesome. And I'm grateful for, I know we have, a small but pretty loyal following. So I'm really grateful to the people out there that were still listening, that are, listening right now, that are sad that the show is ending, and I just appreciate it. I appreciate everybody coming and hanging out with us week after week.
Yeah.
I will say, Sarah and I were talking on the way here, because you did mention that you're on more private and more, quiet or whatever. It was very fun to kind of watch you come out of your shell a little
Yeah,
bit. And I
yeah.
think the first time we saw it was when we first played Just a Minute,
Right.
I think. And like your competitive side came out, and I was like, oh my gosh, Dan's
is
getting
great.
loud and he's getting into it. And so that was just fun to kind of see you come out of your shell a little bit.
Yeah.
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 I think the other cool thing, at some point throughout the 4 years, I think we've all had family members be a part of the podcast. So like Sarah and I have done some stuff
That's
where
true.
our little sister was on it. Your daughters have
girls.
joined in on some of our scripted ones.
Oh, and
Your
his wife was
brother-in-law
on there, too.
Oh
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah. Mac was on there. Yeah. So that was cool. We kind of got to spread it out a little more to our families and have them be
yeah.
part of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're still suffering from the the side effects from being with us for a long amount of time. But yeah, that was we actually did have to have, and we had Sierra as a non-family member guest.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So I think she's the only one. So we've at least been able to have
She's
other
adopted
people.
into
She's adopted
all of our other families.
into that. But yeah, and then the other thing me and Charity were actually talking about earlier was one thing that I've enjoyed from the podcast is our very unique titles, because they don't make sense unless you listen to the episode, which was the whole point. That it's like, what? Why do you not like sideburns? What? And then you had to listen to it to understand why. So those are always fun. Just kind of having some off the wall phrases and stuff that would make for a really fun title. And I think the big thing, while it is a lot of work to put a podcast together, which again, like I guess for all of us, aside from Dan, this is my first time doing a podcast as well. And I knew it was something I had wanted to do for a while. So yeah, it was kind of an experimentation just to see if we could do it and if it was done well and it has some sustaining power, which I think it does. But I've just enjoyed just the conversation, like we've been saying before, just because like me personally, I really don't have a lot of friends. I wish I did. So the times we've been able to come together, I've really enjoyed just talking random and
Chewing the fat.
Oh, there we go. Yes, since we like food so much.
I do have a question. So
Yeah.
I know it's probably hard, aside from Sarah, because she remembers everything. But it's probably hard to like remember every single episode we've done. But do you guys have a favorite topic or a favorite episode that we've recorded over the past few years?
Probably movies. I love talking movies.
That's
Yeah.
that's when you really come
Yeah,
out, and that
I love
always.
that.
I think every movie episode we've done has been a two-parter.
They've been a two-parter.
Yep.
It's hard to stop once you
It
get
is.
rolling on
Yeah.
a movie. Yeah.
Actually, I take it back. There was one there goes Sarah memory again. There was one time, I think it was either the first or second season, we talked about film, and it only lasted one episode. We wanted to go longer. We were like, let's go to the next one. But all the other ones after that have all
Yeah.
been two-parters.
Okay.
So
I think that was part of our beginnings. We were like, well, we don't want to overlap, and then after a
Yeah.
while, we were just like, forget it.
let's over.
Yeah.
We do what we want. This is our podcast.
That's right. Yeah. It's our playground. You play
trying
by
to-
our rules.
I think my favorites. I always enjoy the food episodes just because we like food so much. So a lot of that kind of comes out.
I think every time, at least for us, every time we've had a food episode, like we would go out to lunch afterwards because we were like,
Yeah.
we got to eat something.
It does because sometimes I don't always eat. And sometimes our sessions will last a couple hours. So I'm like, I haven't eaten since last night. So yeah, talking about food. Aside from if you guys listened to last week's episode about or a couple weeks ago about the Victorian food, like what Dan said, I didn't really have much of an appetite after that. But yeah, the food episodes, and like I said, just all of them in general. Like every once in a while, I listen to our first season, and it's partially cringy just because we're listening to.
You're braver than I am. I haven't gone back to the first one. I'm like, I can't do it.
I like listening to the evolution, just to
That's
see.
true.
Just to see how we started and how much of it really hasn't changed much. We're just 4 years older and kind of figured out our way. But like the style is still the same. Our sense of humor, as goofy as it is still the same.
I will say, I have laughed so much
Yeah.
doing these recordings. And even, Sarah will be at my house or, I've heard her at Dylan's or whatever, and she'll be playing the podcast. And I'm like, I'm hearing our laugh somewhere. Where's that coming from?
Yeah.
And so our laughter is very distinctive. At least to me, it kind of stands out in my mind.
Yeah.
But Alan, do you have a favorite topic or a favorite moment for the past few years?
Well, I was really, I remember, and you'll have to let me know when this was, that the Grassiology one,
Yeah.
that whole episode
I knew he was gonna
stemmed
say that.
off the idea that we didn't have a topic, and I was like, oh, don't worry about it. We'll come up with one. And we just did.
Yeah, I want to say that was maybe season 3.
Okay.
It was not long after Dan had left because season 2 we did the series In Your Garage.
Yeah.
So, the studio for the first season, Your Garage for the second season. I think seasons 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7 have been in the regular ones, and
Yeah.
so. But yeah, it had to have been season 3 or 4. For that
Yeah.
one.
We
Yeah.
tried different microphones,
Yeah.
and just the standard mic works the best.
Good
Yeah.
trial and error period.
Yeah.
I will say, you brought up the Grassiology. That made me think, because one of my favorite things was the scripted episodes, just because
Of course,
that's sort of when you think of like radio shows, that's what I prefer. So, the King Allen of Bel Air,
Yeah.
which kind of stemmed off the Grassiology episode.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
fun to hear you try to rap.
Yeah. What we try?
I mean, sorry, to
Unbelievable.
master it. That was
Master.
perfection, Alan.
Yeah, the scripted ones are fun. I always enjoyed doing the Christmas ones. I think my favorite of the scripted Christmas ones was the Jingle Bell sketch that me and Dan did, Christmas of 22. So, yeah, but it's fun to do. It's fun to write. We've been writing for years, but it was our first time actually taking the stuff that we had written
Producing it.
and putting it together. So hopefully we'll do that more in the future, at least with separate endeavors.
So, since Sarah did kind of bring that up, are there other projects that you guys are going to be working on since we're not doing double stuffed anymore? Is there something, or are you just going to kind of lay low for a bit and chill?
Lay low
What's
in
on the
his hidey
horizon for
hole.
Dan and Alan? Any plans?
Well,
together
ahead,
or
go ahead.
separate, whichever.
Yeah.
I got nothing. I mean, I'm.
Your podcast out.
I'm not podcast. It's not that I'm podcast. I just don't have any plans right now. I've been trying to, I don't know, just find a better balance in terms of like media consumption and creation.
Oh,
And it
very
hasn't
stoic.
Hasn't been very
Less is more.
hasn't been very successful so far, but it's
Yeah.
a work in progress. So yeah, I don't have anything on the horizon at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, I've been toying around with a coworker. Her name is Brandy. I don't know if you guys
Master Control.
in Master Control, and we talk about wild theologies and all
interesting.
kinds of things from the Bible that she's really interested in. So I don't know. We'll see where we go with that.
Another podcast with her, or
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be great. Brandy's a hoot and a half.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that would be a really interesting listen.
Yeah.
that would be y'all have an interesting dynamic.
It usually is.
Talk about
yeah.
opposites attract. You guys are so opposite.
Yeah.
But see, I feel like we've now warmed him up
We
for
warmed him up.
her. So now Brandy's
Yeah.
got the broken in version of podcast
Yeah.
Alan. And
Well,
so
and
it'll
it's-
be smooth
so
sailing.
it's, it would be more risky. So one of the things that I really like about Double Stuffed is it's for all ages. I mean, we don't step on anybody's toes. We don't get too deep in the waters
true.
on any.
It's very lighthearted.
Yeah, it's very lighthearted. And it's something that for at any age. So if you're a mom with kids, you can all listen together, or it can be playing in the car, and everybody there's something for everybody. Whereas where I think I want to go in the future is take more risk, be more specific in areas that are of peak interest. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I mean, that kind of leads up to, Sarah and I are working on some stuff. It's interesting that the timing of this is kind of great, although not that I ever wanted our fun to end, but Sarah and I have been planning some projects behind the scenes that we were going to do anyway. But now that this is ending, it's kind of a natural transition into it. Okay. So I know earlier you had talked about how podcasting has changed to where it is more video based, and that was something that Sarah and I wanted to explore, just to continue that knowledge and make sure that you're kind of staying on top of that. So we are kind of starting a video podcast where it's just going to be me and Sarah talking about different things. With Double Stuff, we did share a lot of like personal stories and stuff, and I think we're kind of going to do more. I guess the theme that I sort of came up with was like a morning show in a nutshell, some more like radio show where someone might talk about celebrity news or funny questions or different things like that. And so I think that's kind of the direction that we're going. But we're starting a show called Bobbleheads on the Dash. So
Bobbleheads on the Dash.
yeah,
Okay.
it's kind of a cute thing. So it kind of stemmed from a few years ago. Our dad gave us bobblehead versions of ourselves.
Really?
Yeah, for Christmas.
Yeah, and if anyone follows our We Harmon Sisters page, we used it in a video for our Harmons in Hollywood event
Okay.
at Tallgrass, and so we were showing Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves, and so we did our shrunken selves were
Which is
our
our
bobblehead
bobbleheads.
versions of ourselves, which was
Okay.
fun. But when you're driving along, if you do have bobbleheads on your dashboard, they're kind of just hanging out with you. They're going along for the ride, kind of jamming out to whatever you're doing.
Okay.
And so the
So
idea.
they treat us as bobbleheads.
Yeah,
on
the idea is
dashboard.
that we're just kind of accompanying you on your trip,
you're out.
your whatever your commute
So
is.
you're not shooting the bobbleheads while you're recording. I guess in
No,
my head.
it'll be
No,
us, but I think
Yeah.
the logo's probably going to feature them or something.
Okay.
We're,
Or something,
it's still
yeah.
a work in progress, but that's something that we're heading towards.
Yeah.
So just plugging us. If you
Okay.
follow our pages, also for Double Stuff, we're going to keep those pages active. So if people reach
Yeah,
out to
just
us there,
archived, yeah.
we can still comment and everything. But Sarah and I's page, it's We Harmon Sisters. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. But you can contact us on any of the outlets that we've talked about on the show.
Yeah. And before we bring this to a close, so I feel like we've been part of a series, which it kind of is. So from a very small standpoint, I kind of identify like when a show ends, like how people feel, like when a TV show ends, because they've been working together for however many years and stuff. But usually how a show ends is like, well, what are they going to do, when the show fades to black? So I always had this weird scenario that, like, let's say Tommy Smitherton threw us a goodbye party. And so, all of the random characters that we've created in the show is there, and they're asking us, what are we going to do now the show is over? So I always thought for you, Alan, that you were going, your character, or I guess you as yourself, you were finally going to book that trip to Japan to go to Mount Fuji to try the Yagasabi apple.
Okay.
So that way you can actually see what it tastes like and get that zen that you've been searching for.
Okay.
Charity finally booked that trip to Egypt so she can learn about her ancestor Yitzhak Namra, which was the pharaoh, the pharaoh queen of ancient Egypt.
Yeah, so my name's spelled backwards.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then for Dan was interesting.
Dan's gonna stay home and play with his cats, and so nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed. But at least for Dan, the character, I saw him partnering with Devin the Leech Collector and Eugene the Cowboy into manufacturing Penelope Patch toys. I think that was what I had. So you're partnering with them, a medieval medicine man and an accountant cowboy to make something.
So what inside jokes did you keep for yourself from the series?
I've been so busy working on your guys' scenario, I couldn't think of a good one for me.
Well, who's Eugene, the cowboy?
Eugene the Cowboy was something Charity made up when we were talking about Westerns and how the saloon always gets messed up.
Oh.
And apparently Eugene the Cowboy was the one, like, the numbers isn't adding up and all that kind of stuff. So that was a character that we had created.
But your inside joke from the show was Saucy Decoy McGee, right?
Yeah.
I do remember that.
Because no one would suspect you of doing something bad, and so you're a great decoy because
so
nobody.
now I'm going to go into a life of crime and actually using an alien.
Yeah, but you'll get away with it because nobody will suspect you of committing a crime.
It was
so
saucy.
yeah, so we'll see Saucy Decoy McGee in the headline soon.
somewhere.
we have to cut this part out to make sure you're safe.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you weren't supposed to find out. Now this episode will destruct in 5 minutes. So, but yeah, I thought I was like, that'd be kind of interesting. Like, that's how our characters would go off,
Okay.
in two of the scenarios that we've created throughout the past 4 years.
Oh, that's
So-
kind of cute.
Yeah, because I overthink these things too much. So I think that's pretty good closure for us, at least for this episode.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so we are ending this episode with a goodbye to all of the listeners that have joined us over the past 4 years. We want to thank you for hanging out with us. Like we said earlier, the episodes will still be up, so you can enjoy them for as much as you want. If you still want to follow our various pages, Sarah, go ahead and let them know where they can find both our new podcast and where they can follow Double Stuffed.
Yeah, so if you want to check me and Charity's new podcast out for Bobbleheads on the Dash, you can check out all the different platforms for We Harmon Sisters. So just
Okay.
type that in. For Double Stuff, of course, like Charity said, everything's going to be archived, but you can check it out on doublestuffpod.com. That's the main website. All the episodes are also on YouTube at Double Stuff Podcast. You can check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Double Stuff Podcast, and of course on Twitter, Double Stuff P, and that's the letter P.
Goodbye. Goodbye. Farewell.
Auf Wiedersehen. Goodbye. Actually, we're gonna.
I'm gonna be the little girl that falls asleep.
Yeah.